Everyone feared the millionaire's wife until a black waitress made her cry in silence. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The restaurant was silent except for the slow clink of a silver spoon against porcelain. Every table paused when the woman in the white pearl jacket raised her voice. I said no one like her serves my table. Her words weren't shouted. They were sculpted perfect, cold, deliberate, and they hit harder than any slap could. Across from her stood a young black waitress, her posture straight, her expression calm. No one moved. Not the manager pretending to check his tablet. Not the guests holding their breath behind polite smiles. The air smelled like truffle oil and fear. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. The millionaire's wife, Eleanor Whitmore, was the kind of woman people made space for. Money, charity galas, headlines, she carried them all like armor. She dined here twice a week and owned half the block. Her table was always the same. Window seat, gold-trimmed plates, and a staff that knew better than to make eye contact. But tonight, something cracked that illusion. Her husband hadn't arrived yet. Her wine had. And the waitress Maya Brooks wasn't the one she expected. Eleanor's gaze dropped like a blade. "Get me someone else," she said quietly. The kind of quiet that comes from knowing the world obeys you. Maya didn't move. She simply said, "I can assist you, ma'am." Eleanor's lips tightened. "No, you can't." The whisper slid across the table, soft but venomous. Maya had seen that look before in luxury stores, airport lounges, even when she was a kid holding her mother's hand at a department counter. The look that says times you exist but not here. Asterisk. Around them, forks froze mid-air. One man whispered, "Is she really saying that?" Another woman stared at her phone, pretending to scroll. No one intervened. Not yet. The manager's face turned pale, caught between policy and power. Eleanor leaned back, perfectly poised. "I pay too much to be handled by amateurs." The word hung there, amateurs, like it carried a color. Maya's chest rose once, slowly. Her voice stayed even. "Would you like me to send my supervisor?" Eleanor smiled thinly. "Sweetheart, you don't have one. You just have orders." Maya's jaw tightened, but her tone didn't waver. "Then I'll follow them." She turned to leave, and the whispering began again, low and electric. One guest muttered, "She's gonna lose her job." Another said, "No, she's about to make history." Because if they had looked closely, they would have seen the tiny black pin on Maya's apron, a gold emblem shaped like a crescent. Only a few people in the city knew what it meant. It wasn't just a logo, it was ownership. And the woman Eleanor just dismissed wasn't a waitress at all. She was the silent partner behind the restaurant itself, the one who'd built it from the ground up, the one whose name the staff never dared to say out loud. But tonight, she wasn't silent anymore. The restaurant's rhythm tried to return, but it could not. The sound of polished forks and quiet conversation had turned brittle, like everyone was pretending the world had not just cracked open at table 4. Maya walked away from the millionaire's wife with the same calm that had carried her through harder rooms than this. She moved toward the service station, her hands steady, her face unreadable, her step soft enough to seem invisible. But invisibility was what had built her empire. Behind the scenes, she had learned that power is not in who speaks loudest, but in who controls the silence. At the counter, the manager, David, intercepted her. His smile was made of nerves. "Maya," he said quietly, "what just happened?" She did not answer right away. She placed the tray down, aligned each glass, and then looked him in the eye. "A reminder," she said, "that respect cannot be ordered off the menu." David's jaw flexed. He had been in the industry long enough to know this kind of scene could destroy reputations, but he also knew better than to question her too far. "She is a regular," he whispered. "Her husband, he owns the building across the street." Maya raised an eyebrow slightly. "Good," she said. "That means he knows what consequences look like." At the far end of the room, Eleanor Whitmore sat rigid, her hand around the stem of a wine glass, knuckles pale. The air around her shimmered with humiliation disguised as control. She could feel the eyes on her, the pity she could tolerate, the judgment she could not. She snapped her fingers for another server, but no one moved. The same silence she had once used as power was now pressing back against her. Across the dining floor, Maya turned to the assistant manager, Claire, a young woman who had been watching the exchange with quiet rage. "Claire," Maya said softly, "start the review log. Note the time, 10:58. Claire nodded, already pulling out her tablet. "Should I call compliance?" she asked. Maya replied, "Not yet. Let us give them the rope first." Her tone was calm, not cruel. It was the patience of someone who had seen this play out too many times. Eleanor rose from her chair suddenly, her pearl bracelet clinking like a small alarm. "I will not be humiliated in public by a waitress," she declared, her voice slicing through the room. Guests turned, phones lifted discreetly. Maya did not flinch. "No one is humiliating you, ma'am," she said, her tone steady, respectful, but final. "You are doing that part yourself." The line cut deeper than any insult. Even David froze. The air was thick now, every breath measured. Then came the inevitable, the phone in Eleanor's hand. She lifted it, her manicured finger trembling slightly as she began recording. "Perfect," Maya said quietly. "Let us have evidence." A small murmur rippled through the room. The staff glanced at each other, unsure whether to step in or stay out. Claire whispered, "She is going to post this." Maya shook her head. "No, she is going to regret it." Behind her calm eyes, calculation was already unfolding. She sent a short text under the counter. 3 floors above the restaurant, in an office lined with glass and steel, a notification pinged on the phone of Mr. Andre Fields, Chief Operations Officer of the Crescent Dining Group. The message read, "Protocol 9, Customer Misconduct. Location 5th and Main. Sender MB." Andre's lips curved into a faint smile. "So she finally used it," he said to his assistant. Back downstairs, Eleanor's husband, Richard Whitmore, finally entered the restaurant, his arrival delayed by a board call. He spotted his wife, saw the phone in her hand, and sensed the storm. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "what did you do?" She gestured toward Maya. "That woman insulted me." Richard looked at Maya, then at David, then at the dozen silent faces in the room. "Did she?" he asked. David hesitated. "Sir, I think you should sit down." The pause that followed was heavy, the kind that bends time. Maya's voice was calm but absolute. "Mr. Whitmore, your wife demanded that I not serve her because of who I am. I will let the evidence speak." Richard stared at her, then at the phone still recording, and slowly lowered his voice. "Eleanor, turn that off." It was the first time anyone in that restaurant had ever told her what to do, and for the first time she obeyed. For a long moment, no one moved. The dining room had become a stage, and every glance, every breath, every shifting hand was part of a play no one wanted to admit they were watching. Maya stood perfectly still, her apron neat, her posture unbroken. Richard Whitmore exhaled through his nose, the sound of a man who had built empires but was now standing in a room he could not control. "Maya," he said evenly, "I believe there has been a misunderstanding." She tilted her head slightly. "There has been," she replied, "but not on my part." Her tone was level, respectful, but it carried weight. The kind that came from knowing facts were already on her side. Richard looked at David, the manager, whose face was pale with the kind of dread that comes from realizing something bigger than policy is unfolding. "Sir," David said carefully, "we have logs, cameras, and audio. Everything was recorded." Eleanor's eyes widened. "You recorded me?" she demanded. "That is illegal." Maya's gaze didn't move. "It is standard," she said, "for guest and staff protection." The guest nearby murmured, a low hum of curiosity mixed with discomfort. Some whispered to their companions, others discreetly started filming. Eleanor's reputation had been built on charity galas and magazine covers. This, however, was not the kind of publicity she controlled. Maya turned toward the service counter, speaking quietly into the mic pinned near her collar. "Claire, confirm receipt of footage to corporate compliance." The young assistant's voice came back steady. "Received and uploaded." Richard straightened his tie. "Maya, perhaps we can handle this privately." She met his eyes, calm and direct. "With respect, Mr. Whitmore, When dignity is taken in public, it will be restored in public. The words dropped heavy, final. Somewhere near the back of the restaurant, a glass clinked softly, like punctuation. Richard's face shifted from discomfort to realization. "You are not just staff, are you?" he asked quietly. Maya did not answer. She did not have to. Her silence was confirmation enough. Upstairs, the elevator chimed, and two men in dark suits stepped out, carrying sleek black tablets. They walked through the restaurant without hesitation. One leaned toward Maya and spoke softly. "Protocol 9 inches effect, Miss Brooks." The way he said her name made Eleanor flinch. "Miss Brooks, not Miss," not the casual tone reserved for subordinates. Maya gave a small nod. "Proceed," she said. The taller man turned to Richard. "Mr. Whitmore, we represent Crescent Corporate Compliance. Your wife's conduct triggered a formal review. We have documentation, witness statements, and footage. Would you like to handle this on record or off record?" The guests whispered again. Eleanor's face went pale. "This is absurd," she hissed. "Do you know who I am?" The officer replied evenly. "Yes, ma'am." "Do you?" The silence that followed was electric. Richard ran a hand over his face. "Please," he said to Maya, "let us resolve this quietly." She finally spoke, her voice low but firm. "Mr. Whitmore, I believe in resolution, not silence. Too many people have been told to stay quiet when treated like they do not belong. Tonight, that ends here." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, part fury, part disbelief. "You are enjoying this, aren't you?" she spat. Maya shook her head slowly. "No, ma'am, I am enduring it." The compliance officer handed Richard a tablet. On the screen, a real-time document showed the incident report, signed by 2 witnesses and timestamp. "As of this moment," he said, "your wife is banned from all Crescent Group establishments until further review." Eleanor gasped. "Banned? You cannot—" Richard interrupted, his voice low, heavy with resignation. "They can. She made a scene in the wrong place, Ellie." The room was still again. Maya looked at Eleanor for the first time with something almost like empathy. "People remember how they are treated, Mrs. Whitmore," she said. "Not what they were wearing, not who they were sitting with, but how they were made to feel." Eleanor blinked hard, her pride collapsing under the truth. "I did not mean—" she started, but Maya stopped her gently. "Intent does not erase impact." The room's tension eased, replaced by something quieter, deeper. Richard extended a hand toward Maya, his expression tired but genuine. "Miss Brooks," he said, "I believe I owe you and your staff an apology." Maya looked at his hand but did not shake it. "You owe it to yourself to do better," she said. And then, turning to her team, she added, "Resume service." The restaurant exhaled all at once, like the room itself had been holding its breath. The night was not over, but the balance had shifted. Power, once hidden, had finally spoken. The apology hung in the air like perfume after a storm, faint but undeniable. The guests began whispering again, not in scandal this time, but in awe. Maya nodded once to her staff, and the rhythm of the restaurant cautiously returned. Plates clinked, glasses filled, and conversations picked up in fragments, but the atmosphere was not the same. Something in that room had shifted permanently. David, the manager, approached Maya near the host stand. His voice was low, respectful now. "Miss Brooks," he said, choosing her name with deliberate care. "Corporate just called. They said to proceed with full protocol verification." Maya met his gaze calmly. "Then let us finish what was started." She turned toward the compliance officers who had been standing discreetly near the bar, their tablets glowing faintly in the dim light. "Run the full sequence," she instructed. One of them nodded and began typing. Within moments, the restaurant's digital system came alive. The staff terminals flickered, showing notifications, timestamps, and protocol alerts. Every logged interaction from that evening, orders, service requests, guest communications flashed across the screen. The officers cross-checked each entry with camera footage from the ceiling's discrete security domes. Eleanor's voice echoed faintly from the playback, brittle and cruel. "I said no one like her serves my table." The sound replayed through the speakers, softer but clear enough for everyone to hear. A collective silence followed. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. "Turn it off," she whispered. "Please." But no one moved. Richard stood beside her, his expression hard to read. You wanted to make a scene, he said quietly. Now you have one. Maya did not gloat. Her expression was composed, almost gentle, but her presence filled the room with a quiet authority that no title could grant. She spoke softly, but her words carried weight. Every establishment under Crescent Group has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, whether verbal or behavioral. Tonight, that policy will be honored. She turned to the officers. File and close under Section 6. They nodded. One officer, a woman with sharp eyes, added, Miss Brooks, would you like us to initiate the internal review of staff compliance as well? Maya hesitated briefly, then nodded. Yes, fairness must go both ways. David lowered his head slightly, knowing what that meant. Even those who stayed silent would be evaluated. The officer tapped her tablet. Done. Eleanor sat back down, the fight leaving her shoulders. Her pearls no longer looked like power, but like chains she had chosen to wear. She looked up at Maya, her voice trembling. What are you going to do to me? Maya regarded her evenly. Nothing more than what you did to yourself. The words were not cruel. They were factual, steady, and unshakable. Richard rubbed his temples. Eleanor, he said, it is time to leave. She opened her mouth to argue, but her husband's tone left no room for debate. Slowly, she rose. Her chair scraped against the marble floor, the sound loud in the quiet room. As they moved toward the exit, several guests averted their eyes, not out of shame but out of recognition. They had seen power misused, and it looked smaller now than they had imagined. When the doors closed behind the Whitmores, Maya let out a slow breath. Claire approached from the side, her voice soft but awed. I have never seen anything like that. Maya smiled faintly. Neither have they. David stepped closer. Miss Brooks, if I may ask, was this planned? Maya looked at him, her gaze steady. You do not plan injustice. You just stop pretending it surprises you. The line lingered in the air like a quiet sermon. The compliance officers finished their reports, signed them digitally, and handed Maya a stylus. She signed with precision, her name bold on the screen. Maya Brooks, co-founder, Crescent Dining Group. David's eyes widened. You are, he began, but she interrupted softly. Yes, and tonight, you saw why I come unannounced. Around them, the restaurant began to feel lighter, as if it had exhaled the poison it had been holding. Maya looked around the room, her voice calm. Let us make sure this place remembers why it was built not for status, but for respect. The words settled into the marble, into the walls, into the people who had witnessed the night's reckoning. The restaurant was quiet again, but this time, it was not fear, it was reverence. The restaurant stayed hushed long after the Whitmores were gone. It was the kind of silence that follows a confession, heavy but cleansing. The staff stood scattered across the floor, unsure whether to return to their routines or to simply absorb what had happened. Maya looked around, her gaze steady, her breathing slow, and then she broke the silence with a voice that carried calm command. Reset the system logs and reopen the floor for service, she said. Tonight does not end in fear, it ends in clarity. David gave a small nod, motioning the team to move, but his expression was still one of awe. He had worked for wealthy owners before, but none had ever stood in the middle of their own restaurant without announcing it, let alone defended a waitress from a millionaire's wife. As the team moved quietly, Claire approached, holding a digital tablet. Miss Brooks, she said, corporate wants confirmation that Protocol 9 was executed successfully. They are asking if you want to escalate to board-level review. Maya took the tablet, scanning the report, her eyes moving methodically across the screen. No escalation, she said finally. The lesson was public, and that is enough. Let them see what respect looks like enforced. Claire hesitated. Understood. She took a slow breath before asking, why do you come here in disguise? You could announce your visits, and everyone would treat you perfectly. Maya smiled faintly. Exactly. That is the problem. People behave when they think someone is watching, not because they believe it is right. I prefer to know the truth. Claire nodded slowly, understanding more than Maya realized. The younger woman had seen her share of bias, small, sharp moments that cut beneath the skin but never left visible wounds. Tonight, she had seen what it looked like when someone finally refused to bleed quietly. Near the bar, one of the older waiters, Ben, approached cautiously. Miss Brooks, he said, may I say something? She turned to him, encouraging him to continue. "I have been here 15 years," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I have seen people like her, people who think their money gives them permission to forget manners. But I have never seen someone stop it like that. Not once." Maya's expression softened. "Then remember tonight," she said. "Not for me, but for the next time it happens, and I am not here." His eyes glistened as he nodded. From the corner, the compliance officers finished packing up their tablets. The lead officer approached Maya one last time. "Everything is archived, Miss Brooks. The incident report has been sent to the Ethics Board and Public Relations team. Would you like us to issue a statement?" Maya shook her head. "No press, not yet. Stories like this spread themselves. Let them talk. It is how people learn." The officer smiled faintly, impressed. "Understood. We will close the report." When they left, the restaurant exhaled again, lighter now, the storm replaced by stillness. The candles flickered, the scent of food returned, and the sound of soft music drifted back through the speakers. It felt like the place was remembering itself. David approached once more, lowering his voice. "You know, this will reach the media anyway." Someone was filming. Maya looked toward the table where Eleanor had recorded earlier. "Good," she said simply. "Sometimes truth needs witnesses." She walked toward the front of the restaurant, her shoes silent on the marble floor. The night air from the entrance carried a faint chill, brushing against her face. For the first time that evening, she allowed herself to feel the fatigue creeping in the emotional weight of being both leader and target, always at once. She stood at the doorway for a moment, looking out into the city lights reflected on the wet pavement. Her phone buzzed softly in her hand. A message from Andre Fields flashed on the screen. "Proud of you. The footage is circulating internally. The board stands behind you." Maya smiled, a tired but genuine curve of the lips. "Tell them it was not about standing behind me," she typed back. "It was about standing beside what is right." She slipped the phone into her pocket and looked back once more at the restaurant. Her reflection in the glass was calm, unshaken, the same woman the world often underestimated. Behind her, the team worked quietly but differently now with purpose. She whispered almost to herself, "This is how change starts, not loud, but lasting." Then she turned and walked out into the night, the door closing softly behind her, leaving behind not a scandal but a standard. The city outside was quiet, washed in the reflection of streetlights glimmering on rain-soaked pavement. Maya's footsteps echoed softly as she walked toward the parking lot behind the restaurant, her mind replaying every detail of what had just unfolded. The confrontation, the recording, the silence that followed it was all familiar, painfully so. She had faced rooms like that before, only this time, she had the power to end it on her terms. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call. She answered without hesitation. "Andre," she said, her tone steady but tired. His voice came through warm, measured. "Maya, the board wants to know if we should release an internal statement. It is already trending on social media. Someone uploaded a video clip of the entire thing." Maya stopped beside her car, staring at her reflection in the tinted glass. "Let them watch," she said quietly. "Let them see how silence works when it is used with purpose." Andre hesitated. "You know this will make you a target again." Maya smiled faintly. "It already did, but this time, I get to decide what they hit." She hung up, exhaling slowly. A light drizzle began to fall, soft and cool. She leaned against the car for a moment, eyes closing, the rain mixing with the city's hum. Her mind slipped back to another night. Years ago, long before Crescent existed. She had been 24, working double shifts in a downtown diner just to pay for business classes. One night, a man in a suit had refused to be served by her, insisting on someone more professional. The manager had apologized to him, not her. She remembered walking home in the rain that night, the same kind of soft drizzle, but back then it had felt heavier. That night, she promised herself that one day she would own a place where no one could treat her or anyone like her as invisible, and now she did. That memory faded as she straightened and unlocked the car. Inside, the dashboard light glowed a calm blue. She sat for a moment before turning on the engine. Her phone vibrated again, another message, this one from Claire. "Miss Brooks," it read. "Staff stayed late to clean up. They said thank you. Everyone felt proud tonight." Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest. She typed back, "Tell them I am proud too. Change does not start in boardrooms. It starts in moments like that." She placed the phone face down, the screen light fading. As she drove through the quiet streets, the radio played a low jazz tune, soft and thoughtful. The world outside looked peaceful, but she knew the storm would continue online. Comments, debates, think pieces they would come. Some would defend her, others would twist the story, but that was fine. She had not acted for headlines. She had acted for dignity. By the time she reached her penthouse, the rain had stopped. The building's concierge greeted her with a warm smile, holding the door open. "Rough night, Miss Brooks?" he asked kindly. She smiled back. "Necessary night," she replied. The elevator ride was silent, except for the faint hum of motion. When the doors opened to her floor, the city stretched before her in endless light. She set down her purse, poured herself a glass of water, and walked to the window. The restaurant's location was visible from here, a small, glowing corner in a city that never really slept. She whispered to the glass, as if speaking to her younger self, "You did not dream this far just to stay quiet." Her phone buzzed again, but she ignored it this time. Instead, she stood there, still and unshaken, watching as the rain returned in soft streaks across the skyline. Each drop caught the light and fell, just like truth, quiet, steady, impossible to erase. Tonight, she had not shouted, she had not begged, she had not performed. She had simply stood her ground. And that, she knew, was how revolutions begin, not in anger, but in quiet certainty. The city below shimmered with it. Morning sunlight crept across the floor-to-ceiling windows of Maya's penthouse, spilling soft gold onto the marble and glass. The city below was already awake, humming with the quiet urgency of a new day. Maya sat at her kitchen counter, a cup of black coffee cooling beside her untouched. Her tablet was open, showing dozens of notifications, emails, headlines, messages. The video from last night had gone viral. Every major outlet had picked it up, each one spinning its own version of the truth. One headline read, "Millionaire's wife banned after restaurant confrontation." Another, "Black co-founder exposes discrimination live." She scrolled slowly, her expression unreadable. There was no triumph in her eyes, only reflection. Her assistant, Jordan, arrived a few minutes later, carrying a laptop and 2 folders. "You are trending everywhere," he said cautiously. "Crescent's public relations team wants to release a statement before noon. They are asking for your quote." Maya closed the tablet, setting it aside. "The footage speaks for itself," she said. "People do not need statements. They need accountability." Jordan nodded but hesitated. "You should see this," he added, opening his laptop and turning the screen toward her. A clip played Eleanor Whitmore standing outside the restaurant last night, surrounded by cameras. Her makeup was smeared, her voice shaking. "I was provoked," she said. "That waitress wanted attention. It was a setup." Reporters shouted questions, flashes bursting around her. Maya's jaw tightened slightly, but she said nothing. "They are trying to spin it," Jordan said quietly. "Classic damage control." Maya took a sip of her now, cold coffee. "Let them," she said calmly. "The truth does not need to compete with noise." Jordan watched her for a moment, then asked, "Do you ever get tired of fighting the same battle?" She smiled faintly. "I am not fighting anymore. I am building." Her phone buzzed. Andre Fields was calling again. She answered. "I saw the news," he said immediately. "Public relations is holding, but there is talk of making you the face of Crescent's new equity initiative." Maya leaned back slightly. "That sounds like a title, not a solution." Andre chuckled softly. "You are not wrong, but you should know something else. The Whitmores reached out. They want a private meeting." Maya's eyebrows lifted. "Really? What for?" "Eleanor's husband wants to discuss a partnership proposal. He claims he admires the way you handled things." Maya let out a quiet, ironic laugh. "Power respects what it recognizes," she said. "Schedule it for tomorrow." "Are you sure?" Andre asked. "After everything?" "Especially after everything," she replied. When the call ended, she stood and walked toward the window again. The city stretched endlessly before her, glittering with both possibility and hypocrisy. She whispered softly, "They only come to the table when the table turns." Later that afternoon, Maya arrived at Crescent headquarters for an unscheduled meeting with the board. The mood was different this time, measured, respectful, even admiring. Board members who had once doubted her quiet leadership now praised her decisiveness. "You handled a public crisis with grace," one of them said. Maya nodded but corrected him gently. "It was not a crisis, it was a reflection." The mirror just happened to be turned toward them. They exchanged glances, unsure whether it was praise or warning. When the meeting adjourned, Andre caught up with her outside the conference room. "You know," he said, "you are changing how people see leadership." Maya smiled faintly. "Not changing," she replied. "Reminding. Power and respect were never supposed to be opposites." As she left the building, cameras waited at the entrance, flashes already clicking. She paused, looking directly into the lenses. "Respect is not granted," she said softly. "It is mirrored." Then she turned away, walking into the sunlight, her steps steady, her reflection clear on the polished glass doors behind her. The next morning, the lobby of the Whitmore Tower was buzzing with reporters. Flashbulbs went off in rapid bursts as Maya stepped out of her black sedan, escorted by two Crescent representatives. Her calm composure stood in stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded her. Dressed in a simple gray suit and no jewelry, she looked nothing like the image the tabloids had painted, a powerful businesswoman seeking revenge. She was there for one reason only: to close the loop. Inside, Richard Whitmore waited in a private conference room on the top floor. The room was all glass and marble, overlooking the same skyline where his wife's disgrace had gone viral just 2 nights before. As Maya entered, he rose immediately. "Miss Brooks," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." She shook it once, firmly, but without warmth. "Mr. Whitmore," she replied evenly, "I assume this is not an apology meeting." Richard exhaled, the faintest smile touching his lips. "No, it is business. I believe our companies could work together." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You mean you want to partner with the woman your wife tried to humiliate?" He nodded, not denying it. "What happened was unacceptable. I do not defend her actions, but I do understand what they revealed. Publicly, my name is tied to this scandal. Privately, I would like to make it right." Maya studied him for a moment. "Make it right or make it profitable?" He hesitated, then admitted. "Perhaps both." She appreciated the honesty. "That is at least a start," she said. "What exactly are you proposing?" Richard leaned forward, sliding a folder across the polished table. "Whitmore Group owns several hospitality properties, boutique hotels, private lounges, a resort chain in Florida. I want Crescent to take over management. You have built a culture that my brand lacks. You have something money cannot buy: credibility." Maya opened the folder, scanning the figures. The offer was generous, maybe even excessive. "You are willing to hand me part of your empire," she said quietly, "because your wife forgot her manners." Richard's voice softened. "Because she reminded me how fragile reputation is when it is not built on respect." The room went silent for a moment, filled only by the distant hum of city traffic. Maya closed the folder slowly. "You know this partnership will make headlines. People will say you are trying to buy redemption." "They already are," he replied. "But redemption cannot be bought. It can only be earned. I am asking for the chance to start earning it." Maya stood, looking out the window. The city stretched beneath her feet, the same city that had once told her she did not belong. "You know," she said, "it is interesting how quickly power changes hands when truth walks into the room." Richard nodded. "You are right. That is why I want you in the room next time." She turned back to face him, her expression unreadable. "Then here is my condition," she said. "Every property under Crescent Whitmore Partnership will undergo a full equity audit, hiring practices, guest treatment, internal culture, and I will personally oversee it." Richard did not even blink. "Done," he said. "Anything else?" Maya held his gaze. "Yes. Tell your wife this partnership does not erase what happened. It transforms what comes after." For the first time, Richard smiled without defensiveness. "Understood." They shook hands again, this time as equals. As Maya walked toward the elevator, she glanced briefly at the framed photograph on the wall, Richard and Eleanor at a gala, smiling for cameras that once adored them. The reflection of her face in the glass aligned with theirs for just a moment, but hers did not waver. When she stepped into the elevator, she felt no vindication, only confirmation. The door closed with a soft chime, and for the first time in years, Richard Whitmore stood alone in a room that no longer felt like his. Outside, the cameras flashed again as Maya exited the building, but she did not stop. The world could speculate all it wanted. She had already rewritten the narrative. By the following week, the partnership between Crescent Dining Group and Whitmore Holdings had become the most talked-about business story in the country. Headlines described it as an alliance born from scandal, but insiders called it something else entirely, a realignment of power. Maya did not give interviews. She did not need to. Her silence carried more credibility than any press release could. At Crescent's headquarters, staff members moved with quiet pride, aware that their leader had turned humiliation into influence. In one of the glass conference rooms overlooking downtown, Maya reviewed the final documents. Across from her sat Andre Fields and the company's legal director, Dr. Palmer. "The deal is finalized," Palmer said, adjusting his glasses. "Crescent now holds full management authority over Whitmore's entire hospitality portfolio. That includes their Florida resorts, the Seattle lounges, and the private clubs in New York and Chicago." Maya nodded, her expression calm. "Then we make good on our promise. Every location will go through the same reform. Crescent enforces transparency, accountability, diversity audits, all of it." Andre smiled faintly. "You know they only agreed because they could not risk losing public trust." "Good," she replied. "Fear can build discipline, but respect builds permanence." Palmer closed the folder and leaned back. "Miss Brooks, if I may, this is historic. No one in this industry has ever turned an incident of discrimination into structural reform on this scale." Maya looked out the window, her reflection blending with the skyline. "That is because most people settle for apologies instead of change," she said. Later that afternoon, she visited one of the Whitmore properties, a luxury hotel in Midtown Manhattan that had once symbolized exclusion. The staff lined up nervously in the grand lobby, expecting a formal reprimand. Instead, Maya spoke softly. "I am not here to take over," she said. "I am here to make sure this place earns the word hospitality again." She walked the marble floors slowly, pausing at the reception desk. "This desk," she said, touching its polished edge, "is the first boundary people cross when they enter your world. Make sure it never becomes a wall." The employees exchanged glances, some embarrassed, others inspired. A young receptionist, visibly nervous, asked, "Miss Brooks, will Mrs. Whitmore be coming back?" Maya smiled gently. "Maybe one day, when she learns what service really means." A quiet ripple of laughter broke the tension, and the staff began to breathe again. After the tour, Maya met with the hotel's general manager, a woman named Harper, who had been with the Whitmore chain for 10 years. "We have lost guests," Harper admitted. "The backlash online has been brutal." Maya nodded. "Then rebuild from truth. Every policy, every smile, every hire. Make sure it reflects who you are, not who you are trying to please." Harper's eyes softened. "I never thought leadership could sound like that," she said quietly. "It does not need to sound like power," Maya replied. "It just needs to sound like conviction." When she left the hotel, the sun was setting, painting the skyline in shades of amber and gold. She paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the towering Whitmore sign. For a brief moment, the reflection of the letters shimmered across her face, and she thought of the younger version of herself, the girl who had once been turned away from a similar lobby, told she did not belong. Now she owned the very kind of world that had tried to reject her. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. "Staff meeting complete. Everyone asked if they could watch the footage again for training." Maya typed back, "Let them. It is not a story about shame. It is a story about becoming seen." As she walked away, the city lights came alive around her, each one a small flicker of something larger, proof that quiet revolutions begin not with noise, but with the courage to stay visible when the world tries to erase you. By the end of the month, Crescent's influence had reshaped more than just one brand. It had begun to ripple across the entire hospitality industry. Other companies watched carefully as Maya's reform model spread from one Whitmore property to another. What began as a viral moment was now a movement measurable, structured, undeniable. At Crescent headquarters, a live broadcast was being prepared for internal staff and partner institutions across the country. Maya stood backstage, reviewing her final notes. The event director approached her with a headset. "5 minutes, Miss Brooks. The press feed is live and major outlets are tuned in." Maya thanked her with a nod. Andre appeared beside her, calm but excited. "You are about to redefine corporate accountability," he said. She smiled slightly. "Not redefine, remind. People already know what right looks like. They just forget how much it costs." When the stage lights came on, the audience quieted. Maya walked to the podium with the same composure she had held in that restaurant weeks earlier. The screens behind her displayed the Crescent Whitmore insignia, two opposing halves joined by a silver arc. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady, resonant. "Many of you know why we are here today. A single moment of discrimination brought two companies to a crossroads. We had a choice to treat it as a scandal or as a signal. We chose the latter." Her words were simple, but every sentence landed like truth wrapped in calm authority. "Hospitality," she continued, "was never about luxury. It was about humanity. When that is forgotten, service becomes servitude, and prestige becomes pretense. We are here to rebuild the meaning of welcome." Applause filled the hall, not loud but deliberate. Maya continued, speaking with quiet conviction. "From this day forward, every Crescent Whitmore property will undergo independent audits of inclusivity, guest conduct, and employee treatment. No incident, no matter how small, will go unseen. Transparency is not a punishment, it is protection." The camera panned across the audience, executives, journalists, and staff listening, as if the air itself had weight. "To those who watched the footage from that night," Maya said, "you did not just witness a confrontation, you witnessed an awakening, a reminder that silence, when used wisely, can be the loudest form of resistance." Her tone softened. "I do not tell this story to shame anyone. I tell it because the truth is not an attack. It is an invitation to do better, to be better, and to make spaces that reflect the dignity of everyone who walks into them." When she finished, the audience stood, not cheering but applauding slowly, respectfully, the way people do when they know they are part of something permanent. Backstage, Andre approached her again. "That was perfect," he said. "The media will eat it up." Maya shook her head gently. "Let them eat truth then," she said. Later that evening, back in her office, she stood by the window as the city glowed beneath her. Her phone buzzed a new message, this time from Harper, the general manager of the Manhattan Hotel. "First week after your visit," it read. "Guest satisfaction up 20%. Staff say they finally feel seen." Maya smiled quietly. "That is the number that matters," she whispered. She turned off the lights and looked at the skyline's reflection on the glass. The same city that had once ignored her now mirrored her success, line by line, window by window. She knew there would be more battles ahead, more rooms where her presence would be questioned, more people who would doubt that her calm meant strength. But tonight, she allowed herself to breathe, to stand in the stillness she had earned. Outside, the sky over the city was clear, stars faint against the urban glow, and somewhere below, in a dozen hotels carrying her brand, people of every color were being treated as they should have been all along. For Maya, that was not victory, it was the beginning of justice done right. 2 weeks after the broadcast, Crescent Whitmore's reform initiative had become a case study across the corporate world. Universities began referencing it in ethics programs, journalists debated it on morning shows, and thousands of employees in other industries demanded similar transparency in their workplaces. But for Maya Brooks, it was not the noise that mattered, it was the quiet proof that the system had begun to bend toward fairness. That afternoon, she was back in the same restaurant where everything had started. The dining room was different now, lighter, warmer, and free of the tension that had once hung over every table. The staff moved with confidence instead of fear. Guests smiled without hesitation. David, the manager who had once stood frozen during Eleanor Whitmore's outburst, approached her table carrying 2 menus. "You asked for the usual table," he said, smiling nervously. "It has been reserved under your name since that night." Maya smiled back. "Good," she said. "That means the place remembers." She looked around, taking in the details that had changed. The staff diversity was clear, the service protocols more respectful, the energy grounded in professionalism rather than hierarchy. Claire approached next, tablet in hand. "Miss Brooks, we are finalizing the schedule for staff workshops next week," she said. "Do you want to personally open the first session?" Maya shook her head. "No, let the staff lead it. Real change is not about my presence, it is about theirs." Claire nodded and stepped back. A moment later, the doors opened quietly. To everyone's surprise, Eleanor Whitmore entered the restaurant. The room fell silent. Gone were the pearls and arrogance. She wore a plain navy dress, no makeup, no entourage. She hesitated before stepping forward, her eyes meeting Maya's across the room. David's instinct was to intervene, but Maya raised a hand gently. "It is fine," she said softly. Eleanor approached slowly until she stood at Maya's table. "I know I have no right to ask for your time," she began, her voice low, almost trembling. "But I wanted to see for myself what you built from the mess I created." Maya gestured to the seat across from her. "Then sit," she said. Eleanor obeyed, almost cautiously. For a moment, neither spoke. The room, though full, felt like it belonged only to them. Finally, Eleanor said, "I have been to the Whitmore properties since your changes began. People look me in the eye now. They speak without fear. It feels different." Maya nodded once. "That is the point." Eleanor looked down at her hands. "I thought power meant being served, but I see now it means being accountable." Maya leaned slightly forward, her tone calm but firm. "Power reveals character. When it is used to diminish others, it becomes weakness disguised as authority." Eleanor swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. "I am sorry," she said simply. "Not for the headlines, not for the loss, for the way I saw you that night." Maya's face softened. "Apology is a beginning," she said. "Change is the rest." For a long moment, Eleanor said nothing. Then, quietly, she asked, "Would you let me help?" Maya studied her expression carefully, searching for sincerity. Finally, she nodded. "You can start by funding Crescent's scholarship program for young women who look like me, who want to lead but are told they do not fit the part." Eleanor's eyes widened. Then she nodded without hesitation. "Consider it done." Maya extended her hand. Eleanor took it, and in that handshake, the story that had begun with humiliation found its closure. Around them, the restaurant exhaled, staff watching, guests whispering, the air shifting from memory to renewal. When Eleanor left, Maya looked down at the tablecloth where sunlight hit the glass, forming small fragments of light. She whispered softly, "Justice is not revenge, it is restoration." Outside, the world moved on, but inside, something had finally been healed. Weeks later, the restaurant that had once been the scene of humiliation had become a symbol of transformation. Tourists stopped to take photos outside. News anchors referenced it when talking about corporate reform, and employees from other Crescent, Whitmore locations visited just to experience where it all began. Inside, the air was calm, but it carried something larger than peace. It carried pride. On that afternoon, Maya Brooks stood near the entrance, watching a group of young interns being guided through orientation. They were part of the new scholarship program that Eleanor Whitmore had funded, as promised. The young women listened attentively as Claire explained the company's philosophy. "Hospitality begins with equality," she said. "You cannot serve people with grace if you do not see them with dignity." Maya smiled quietly, recognizing the same sentence she had once spoken to Claire in private months ago. She stepped forward, addressing the group. "Every system," she said, "starts with rules. But culture, the kind that lasts, starts with people. The goal is not to create perfect employees, it is to create places where everyone belongs." The interns nodded, their eyes bright. One of them, a tall girl with braids and confidence beyond her years, raised her hand. "Miss Brooks," she asked, "when people disrespected you that night, what kept you from yelling? From fighting back?" Maya paused, remembering the sting of that moment, the hush, the stares, the disbelief, but she also remembered what came after. "Because silence," she said softly, "is not weakness when you know who you are. Sometimes quiet is the sharpest sound in the room." The girl nodded thoughtfully, and Maya continued. "Do not fight to be feared. Fight to be understood. Fear fades, but respect endures." The room was silent for a heartbeat, and then Claire began to applaud. The others followed, the sound filling the space that had once been heavy with tension. After the session, Maya walked outside into the sunlight. The city moved around, her cars honking, people laughing, life continuing, but she felt something settle inside her, something complete. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Andre. "New numbers are in. Crescent revenue up 12%. Staff turnover down 40%. Your vision is working." She smiled. "It was never about numbers," she typed back. "It was about worth." As she pocketed her phone, she noticed a small envelope taped to the front door. Her name was written in elegant handwriting. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note from Eleanor. "Thank you for not destroying me when you could have," it read. "You taught me that grace is louder than guilt. The scholarship fund will double next quarter." Maya folded the note slowly, her eyes soft with reflection. She whispered, "Then you learned." A light breeze passed through the street, carrying the scent of roasted coffee and early spring. She stood there for a while, watching people pass by different faces, different stories, all moving under the same Sunday. The restaurant's new sign above her read, Crescent House, the old Whitmore name removed, replaced by something unified. Inside, laughter echoed from the dining floor, genuine and unforced. Maya took one last look before walking away. As she did, her reflection appeared briefly in the glass door, strong, calm, unshaken. She had turned prejudice into policy, shame into structure, and a single act of cruelty into a blueprint for justice. The world would remember the story of the night she was underestimated, but she would remember it for what it truly was, the night she reclaimed the meaning of power. As the doors closed behind her, her words from the boardroom replayed like an echo in the air. Leadership is not about how loud you speak. It is about what still stands after the noise fades. And with that, Maya Brooks disappeared into the rhythm of the city she had once fought to belong to, leaving behind not a story of vengeance, but one of transformation, a legacy carved in silence and strength.